Tactical nuke incoming!
Okay, so I've had quite a few people asking me to go over my blue tree setups. I tried recording a breakdown of my main builds, but I was going way too in-depth because there's so much that I want to cover. I'll post that in-depth stuff in a separate entry, but for this video, I'll just do a quick overview of my main full blue tree setup, as well as a hybrid that lets you play in a familiar, overpowered manner. So I've been playing Blue Tree Harlowe since release. It's absolutely the most fun I have playing this game. The playstyle is fucking sick. Now Blue Tree has been slept on, just completely slept on. And I think that's because most people get baited by that combo of Inertia and Falling Bodies. It's a great skill for crowd control, and it's pretty fun to use if you set it up right. However, it doesn't exactly aid in DPS besides entanglement, and having a bunch of enemies rotating in the air makes it a little tough to hit their crit spots. And the other thing that'll make you want to not play this tree is the skill stun lock. You know that expression, don't stick your dick in crazy? We'll treat this thing the same way, man. It'll basically ruin your action skill when it procs, so don't even look at it until you see that Gearbox has fixed it. So what you want to use is cold storage and falling bodies. This is, to me, her bread and butter of the skill tree. Cold storage is insane for mobbing. It's got high damage output, and it's incredibly easy to stack. It one-shots most mobs, and occasionally the extremely healthy badass. And since it's AoE, anyone that's close to the slam dies. Now add falling bodies to the mix, and you're slamming and one-shotting multiple enemies each time you use your action skill. And since I run a skeptic mod, I'm just spamming that bubble all day, especially on bosses. And then for a nice finisher, you can ground slam with Groundbreaker, or you can just regular melee and bitch slap their ass. Kind of feels like a Mars face slam when you do the Groundbreaker. Alright, so the way cold storage works is when you slam an enemy in stasis, or when stasis ends, there will be a cryo explosion around them that will freeze enemies caught in the blast. Now while you have enemies in stasis, you can shoot any of the bubbles to add damage to those ending explosions. Every enemy that's in stasis will have that same amount of damage added to their ending explosion, even if they're put into stasis after that damage has been stacked. So typically you just shoot the first guy immediately after bubbling him, and this damage gets buffed by other cryo and splash damage skills, and it will also crit thanks to Make Extraordinary, which is also easy to stack. So it's pretty common to see 6-digit damage numbers coming from cold storage. Falling Bodies lets us add additional enemies into stasis at the cost of some action skill duration. It works out to about 4 enemies at a time, but its other function is that when your action skill ends, all enemies in stasis will slam straight down. Once you bubble that 4th dude, your action skill ends and they all slam down. This is what's really going to proc cold storage for that massive damage, as well as dealing the standard slam damage. So you see how it all synergizes perfectly? You can use cold storage without falling bodies, kind of like a meteor hammer or wrecking ball, and it can do a lot more damage on its own or with cold plunge. But unless you bubbled like an elemental eater or something, you'll end up killing that enemy too quickly to get a lot of slams out of them, even on true mode. Now despite that, I still think cold storage needs a buff. The true mode health pool is kind of outscaled the cap. If you wanted to do more slamming though, the other setup you can use is Inertia and Cold Plunge. Cold Plunge also needs a damage buff, but on UVH6 and True Mode, this setup also works, albeit it's a little bit slower than Cold Storage and Falling Bodies. Thankfully you can switch between them all with the way I've got her spec'd, so you can play around a lot. When it comes to bossing, you're basically spamming your action skill on them, keeping them entangled, and keeping your buffs active. There's some tech you'll want to utilize to maximize your DPS, but I'll cover that later. And for real bosses like Bloomreaper and the Vault guys, you're going to switch out some firmware, and I'll cover that when I go over the gear. So for the spec, starting at the top of the tree, parallel circuit, 5 points here for 30% gun damage whenever you trigger or re-trigger your action skill. It's always up because we're constantly spamming our action skill. Bright Future functions the same, only it gives you fire rate. Only take 3 points in a Bright Future. Make Extraordinary. Now this is your moneymaker right here. 5 points in here. Harlowe gains critical chance with all skills. It increases every time she entangles an enemy, and it stacks. Max at 10 stacks. Basically 100% chance at full stacks. Now, just to touch on this a bit, this skill, this type of skill, they function with the application and reapplication of whatever status effect is listed. What I mean by this is the skill gains stacks every time you entangle an enemy. Now that doesn't mean you need to entangle 10 enemies. That just means you need to apply entanglement to any amount of enemies 10 times, even if it's the same enemy. And if you take a look down here at Force of Will and Slingshot, Force of Will, whenever Harlowe critically hits an enemy, daze that enemy. And then Slingshot, whenever you daze an enemy, you also entangle them. So whenever you crit an enemy, you entangle them, thus gaining a stack of Make Extraordinary. Now this is per bullet, so that means with shotguns, you can typically get full stacks with one shot, depending on the pellet count. Sometimes it's half if you kill them too quickly or if you just miss, but generally you get full stacks with one shot. But yeah, Neutron Decay and Resonance Cascade, they function the same. It's very apparent on bosses, especially if you're using like a Chroma Accelerator. The only thing I've come across that doesn't function this way for Harlowe is her Reactor class mod. That one you need unique enemies. But yeah, Make Extraordinary is intimidating at first glance, but once you understand it, you see just how easy it is to stack. And the synergy with Daze is just beautiful. But this crit is really what's going to let Cold Storage shine. Okay, moving on. Negative Entropy. You don't really care about this skill. It's pretty jank. So you throw 1 point into this to unlock Precision Engineering for that extra 30% critical hit damage. Periodic Table Flip. Harlowe gains increased elemental damage, status effect application chance, and cryo effectiveness. Honestly, you just care about the status effect application chance, so 4 points here. This unlocks cryodynamics, 3 points here for 21% extra cryo damage. Now Ripple Effect. This isn't required. It's typically if you just want to use a Bio-Robot class mod, but a while back when they buffed the Skeptic stasis damage, it's preferable to use this over a Bio-Robot. In true mode though, a Bio-Robot can be better for mobbing. The reason you want Ripple Effect with a Bio-Robot is, honestly it's a lot to go over, but basically you just want the enemies entangled before you shoot them. Now the lower branches. Concurrence and Control Group, these don't really help in the setup, but you can split points if you want the option to run Inertia. I do have setups that utilize these, but those are perspective builds that I'll cover later. Force of Will and Slingshot. Kinda went over these, but Force of Will is fucking sick. If you're an OG Lilith player, you know how busted Daze was. When an enemy's dazed, their movement speed and attack speed are reduced by 50%. It says Daze can stack, but how many times? What's the cap? I have no idea. That's a good question. This is pretty fun on mobs because it's like you pop some jet in Fallout, but unlike Lilith, unfortunately we can't apply Daze to bosses. Oh, and this doesn't work on Vile Crystals, even if you use a crit knife. Off the top of my head, there's only one boss I can think of that you can Daze. It's the robot guy. I can't remember his name. You can stasis him too, which is pretty cool. But honestly, you should be able to Daze bosses. I mean, if red and green trees can both delete bosses in 2 seconds, I think blue tree should be able to at least use crowd control on them. Call me crazy, I don't know. And Slingshot. 40% extra move speed when you Daze an enemy. Feels really nice, helps you move around to bubble everyone. This is what I think dazing bosses should be applied to, because I think Force of Will is on some class mods. I think that'd be a little overpowered. Anyway, 5 points here is what lets us unlock Falling Bodies. Skip Freeze Frame, skip Stun Lock. Honestly, Freeze Frame should have higher bonus damage, more stacks, and you should be able to put more points into this. But I'll cover that some other time. Stun Lock, it's bait. Trust me, don't take it. 5 points in Unstable Isotope. When you kill an enemy, you get 35% bonus cryo damage with all sources for 8 seconds. This skill is very strong, and it's pretty noticeable when it isn't active. Depending on the weapon you use, you might want to try to proc this on ads while you're bossing. And then 5 points to keep eyes on that. All cryo damage you deal gains lifesteal. When you're at full health, you gain overshield instead. Bullshit. This skill does not function properly. It needs to be reworded for better clarification. But take it because it will save your ass. This opens up Triple Point. Now with Triple Point, you deal 15% bonus cryo damage to entangled enemies. This bonus damage is increased to 30% when you hit them with cryo weapons or skills. And this skill is pretty strong since it's so easy for us to entangle enemies and bosses. Skip Flash Freeze since Cold Storage takes care of the freezing for us, which lets us, again, refund our cooldown with Skeptic. But when you're just learning this playstyle, you can take this on the off chance things survive Cold Storage. But they're probably going to be frozen anyway if they survive the slam. This won't help you with bossing either, since I'm almost certain you can't freeze bosses in this game. You can lag out the game with grenades and projectiles, and it can appear that you're freezing a boss, but you're just glitching out the game at that point. And the last 3 points into Indiscreet Math for that extra splash damage, which buffs our guns and our skills. So when you're bossing, and I don't mean drill side bosses, I mean stuff like Radix, you're going to swap off of Cold Storage, because this deals no additional damage to the bosses. You're going to swap to Wildcat Destabilization. And Wildcat makes enemies take bonus radiation from Entangled. It's not a lot, it's only 25% of 7%. That's the shared damage. The enemy you actually shoot, though, will take that 25% bonus radiation damage. That's not the main concern, it's nice. The main concern is that this can proc rad dots, or status effects, which will help with the Skeptic class mod. And side note, this doesn't deal like real radiation damage, so it won't stack skills like Neutron Decay or Resonance Cascade. You'll probably want to swap off falling bodies as well, because if you accidentally place an ad into stasis during the fight, you can't use your action skill on the boss. Yeah, animations will play, the stasis stream will show, but they won't take damage and they will not become entangled. If you swap to Cold Plunge, this doesn't work on bosses either. You can throw that ad into the boss to make it easier to find and kill, so you can put your action skill on cooldown. Plus, it'll keep your buffs active. Eventually though, when you're used to the playstyle, you won't have to swap from cold storage and falling bodies. You can just run with it because you'll know how the skill works. Yeah, that's it for the tree. Like I said, I have another initiative post where I go really into depth on this stuff, so keep an eye out for that. Now, if you wanted to have the option to swap between inertia and cold storage, I recommend you have a setup like this. 4 in a concurrence, 4 in a control group. That's to keep inertia going, keep it active, and you're also going to grab freeze frame, so you benefit from having all those dudes in stasis. Typically you have like 3 to 4 guys in stasis, so you're getting that 30 to 40% damage. Still going to skip stun lock, because again, this will override the action skill, and it does not count as a stack for freeze frame. 1 into Force of Will and 1 into Slingshot. This is the bare minimum to get that entanglement passive. And Daze stacks, so you'll still get some nice slows, which will help you land those Jacob's crits. But you can split them however you prefer, because honestly Inertia lasts so long on its own that it doesn't really need any help. And you should have a split of 3 in Periodic Table, 3 in Bright Future, and 3 in Indiscrete Math. Again, you can move this ripple effect point if you'd like. That playstyle is a little different. You're going to want like ricochets with Jacobs, but I'll cover that too at the end. And for specializations, really do this, 50% gun damage, easy to stack because we're using shotguns. I am a gun and honed mine, going to keep buffing cold storage. UVH6 and true mode, these are pretty much required. And Groundbreaker for those ending slams. You don't have to slam, you can use a regular melee and bitch slap them like I said. If they're flying enemies, yeah, you're going to use a regular melee. You can use Bullet Train or Best Defense if you'd like. Best Defense is a little weird since we don't have any way to regen our regular shield, but if you're using Inertia, everyone's going to be in a bubble, so you're probably not going to take damage. This might be a good bet. Now for the gear. So the start of this build is the Anarchy. Absolutely love this thing. It's my favorite gun in the game. If you didn't play Gauge in Borderlands 2, or you don't know about the Anarchy, basically when you auto-reload or kill an enemy, you get a stack that busts this gun's damage by 15%, but also reduces its accuracy by 15%. You can get a max of 20 of these stacks, and you lose them if you auto-reload, get in a vehicle, swap weapons, or use certain ordinances. Now this is really easy to stack since you're granted a stack at the beginning of the auto-reload animation. That means you can cancel the rest of the animation with like a melee or whatever, and just keep repeating this to quickly build stacks. There's other things you can do to stack, but melee is just the quickest and most reliable. If you accidentally reload, there's no need to worry because you can cancel that animation with the melee again, and you won't be penalized. You have a pretty decent grace period, so no need to unbind your R key. Now there's some tech with this gun that involves that reload canceling that's going to boost our DPS by quite a bit. I'll cover that when I go over the playstyle. You're going to want a few of these. For overall mobbing and drill sites, you're going to want Torque Impact and TDO Shooting Javelin. Torque Impact ups the base damage. It also helps with vile enemies. I prefer non-elemental or kinetic because it gives a bit more damage, but it also helps with elemental eaters. You can match elements to boss's weakness, but that's up to you. You can also run a cryo one for survivability. The other one you'll want is a Torque Sticky with an Atlas underbarrel. Element doesn't really matter, but this is the bossing specific one. You can use the sticky one to mob as well. You're just going to have to reload to stack cold storage or run a Torque Impact enhancement. I'd recommend learning for true mode though, because it kills the bosses a lot faster. Now you don't have to use stickies. You can use Amp Spread Shot, Amp Proxy Mines, Energy Disc Bouncing, Damage Over Time, High Caliber Shenanigans, whatever you want. This is just what I've chosen for this build. I know there's a lot of like underbarrel bigotry going on. You know, the sticky guys are calling the spread launcher guys gay. Stuff like that. It's pretty funny. All this stuff is broken and overpowered. I honestly just prefer using this Anarchy, but to speed up bossing kills, you're going to have to use something. For mobbing and drill site running, technically you can use whatever you want since cold storage is so powerful. The only issue is when a boss spawns, you're going to have to swap to something pretty powerful like a bod or a sticky bod. That's why the Anarchy is so good. You don't even have to stack it. You just run in there bare bones and it stacks itself and it'll be ready by the time the boss spawns. But if you do want to mess around or you're going to run Inertia, I'd recommend shotguns with Jacob's parts. It's not only going to help with the clear speed, but it's also going to help get your cooldown back faster. Repkit, whatever you want to use for bossing, War Paint for sticky stacking, Triple Bypass for amp, I like the war paint, just overall. Ordnance, whatever you want, you can use a crit knife. I would suggest something that'll proc dots and also has lifesteal. Class mods, Skeptic like I said for cold storage. You want this without stunlock, and ideally you want the points split between fire rate and splash damage. The one I'm using isn't very good, doesn't have good rolls. I think I prefer splash over this crit damage. Also, the stasis damage on this thing doesn't seem to be working on bosses. If you're going to run Inertia, you'll probably want a biorobot to get your cooldown back. And with that, you'll want 2 to 3 points in a confirmative reality. If you have a biorobot with good rolls, try it out on the regular build. See if you like it better than the Skeptic. The refund might be slower, but it is more consistent overall. And the shield will be a Watts. This is very important if you're running non-elemental weapons, because this can proc shock dots or status effects, which will help Skeptic refund your action skill cooldown. The added damage is nice. Siphon's really good on this. Amp doesn't do much since we're not regenning our shields. Now enhancements. The one I use has really good stats. Unfortunately it's Atlas, so it does nothing for my main Anarchy. It gets the job done, but if it was Torque, it'd be a lot more damage. Whatever weapon you choose to mob with, just match that enhancement. And if you're running Inertia again, probably run something with Jacobs. But for bossing with a sticky Atlas Anarchy, you're going to want an Atlas enhancement with Protractor. That 50% chance to not consume ammo is what's going to help immensely with sticky stacking. You'll also want this with some fire rate and magazine size. With the release of UVH6 in True Mode, the setup for Firmware has changed. You're going to want 3 in Deadeye and 1 in Skillcraft. Both of these are going to help cold storage one-shot. Without a point in Skillcraft, it gets pretty inconsistent. And Deadeye is really easy to get fully stacked because all it takes is 1 crit from your shotgun. Also, it'll help mitigate some of the accuracy penalty with the Anarchy. And you can float that last point into whatever you want. You can run 3 in Skillcraft, but I'd probably only take that with the Inertia and Cold Plunge combo since it's easier to stack. That's overall mobbing and drill sites and stuff. For bossing, if you're doing spread launchers, one-shot damage over times, match the firmware to what you want. But for sticky stacking, you're going to want 3 in the Atlas Infinitum, because these 3 points, in conjunction with the Protractor enhancement, will allow you to stack a ton more stickies on the boss, getting that big damage. It is a little overkill on base UVH6, but True Mode, it helps a lot. Oh, and it's going to make the Groundbreaker Slam so much more powerful. And the other 2 points, you can use them how you want, maybe doing the airstrike for splash damage. The thing is, you don't need the accuracy for Anarchy since Atlas is just going to make your bullets home in on the enemy anyway. I think that's it for the setup, unless I forgot something. Honestly, I'm just getting over being sick, and for some reason I have a lot of brain fog. It's crazy. But if that's it, I guess it's time to go over how to use this bitch, huh? Oh shit. I'll use this drill site to show off the mobility. The combat's pretty quick, so I'll have to show other clips to explain everything. So you start with your unstacked Anarchy, and you bubble 2 guys right away. Second activation of your action skill doesn't have that mini cooldown, so you can immediately bubble again. The mini cooldown gives you time to stack cold storage before you bubble a 3rd or 4th guy. Now watch this right here. Bubble, and 1 shot. That's only 1 shot to fill cold storage. Bubble again, and then watch the minimap here. 4th guy, boom, they're all dead. That's how I'm playing this. Just looking at the minimap for red dots, watching them slam when they disappear, and repeating that process. That's pretty cool right there. That's the day slow. Even if they get launched, it'll happen in slow motion. Badasses, like I said, you'll probably have to run them through the ringer again. But the good thing about that is, if they survive the slam, they're probably frozen, so you can shoot them to get your action skill back immediately. Their higher health pool gives you more chances to proc the shock dot for that same effect. When everyone's dead, just keep shooting to try to get your action skill back with that shock dot. The Anarchy stacks very quickly, so it just gets easier to mob and fill cold storage. You can melee too if you want, since Groundbreaker is pretty much always ready to go. When the bosses spawn, just light them up and keep spamming your action skill. Once you've done enough damage, you can ground slam if you want to finish them off. Now watch right here, see if you can see the reload tech I was talking about. Same thing, light them up, spam. Boom, there's the reload, and then ground slam. That's it. Drill site mobbing. Really easy. And fast. Okay, so that Anarchy reload tech I was talking about. Remember how I said you can cancel the reload animation to build Anarchy stacks? Well, you can use your action skill to do that as well. And if you time it right, it'll let you start shooting almost immediately. And with that shooting javelin part, it's almost like you never stop shooting. That reload is also faster than the normal TDO reload. This trick increases your DPS by a huge margin. And since we're set up to constantly spam our action skill, this cancel should always be available if you manage it properly. The timing takes some practice, but you'll basically want to use your action skill the moment the gun leaves your hands. You'll get a feel for the visual cues since she swings her left arm before she throws. You can also look at your ammo count to help learn the timing. Once it shows a full ammo count, that's when you use your action skill. This ammo count trick works for almost every gun, and almost every gun has excess time on their reload animation. Some even have a full second of that excess, but it feels the smoothest on TDRs. It also means you can reload the Anarchy on demand without losing stacks. But yeah, it'll take some time to get used to. Also, with that shooting javelin part, if you mistime your cancel and your gun is still empty and the bubble goes on cooldown, the javelin reload can fully refund your action skill if all the pellets hit an enemy with a status effect on them. If it does get completely refunded, you can still cancel some of that ending animation. But if you are forced to reload, throw a grenade or a knife, because you'll still reload while that animation is playing. So when you're fighting bosses, you'll want to pay attention to your ammo and your cooldown. You want your cooldown up when you have one shot left in the mag so you can be ready to cancel. Sometimes that means holding back on spamming your bubble if the animations aren't synced up well enough. Again, you'll get used to all this over time. You can also slow down on the spamming altogether while you learn. Just keep in mind that you're losing some good damage from the bubble. This shit is so much fun when fighting a boss. It was my favorite way to kill Immortal Boneface when he was glitched out. I come from a fighting game background, so this shit feels fucking sick. It's like I'm doing combos and shit. You know, short super, boom, uppercut that bitch. Some other stuff to know, well, her bubble can grab people through walls and terrain. It's super helpful when mobbing. Her bubble can actually hit a lot further than you're probably used to. Especially if you already have someone bubbled, it becomes extremely generous with its range. It'll even hit someone that's behind you. If the first enemy you bubble is a badass, you can just keep aiming and shooting at him while using your bubble. It'll just pick up whoever's around you. It's pretty neat. What else? Oh, when you bubble a guy too high up in the air, this includes over pits. Or if there's something directly above his head, like when he's in a spawn hole, when your action skill ends, those guys will still stay in stasis while the others slam. Then, your action skill will take a couple extra seconds to actually go into cooldown. During this time, you can bubble more dudes and they'll instantly slam. You can bubble like 2 more guys if you know it's coming or if you catch it in time. That shit's pretty tight too. Another thing is if you miss your skill and it puts it on that like 5-second cooldown, well, the Skeptic and Confirmative Reality, they can reduce that penalty, so just keep shooting. Now for a few issues with the skill. Occasionally it'll bug out and it'll show 0.0 on your cooldown and you can't use it. Well, the easy fix for this is going into your menu and changing to the red or green action skill, then changing right back to blue. It'll be fixed once you exit the menu. Honestly, the skill's a bit inconsistent overall. Sometimes the enemies take way too much damage, and sometimes they don't take any damage at all, but for the most part it functions properly, and that inconsistency tends to work out in our favor. I think the terrain has something to do with enemies not receiving damage, because it usually happens when it's not flat, or there's an object near their impact point. Also, Gearbox broke her bubble with the Bloomreaper patch. Well, there was a really early patch that screwed it up first, but the Bloomreaper one really fucked it up. So sometimes when you activate it on an enemy, or you're shooting them while they're in the bubble, it'll just pop. I don't know what the fuck happened, but they fucked it up. Thankfully, it's not all that common. It can kind of throw you off a bit, but it's not too big of a deal. And for mobbing with stickies and other guns, stickies are basically the same thing. Just make sure when you're shooting the bubbles, you manually reload every so often to actually deal damage for cold storage. And don't forget to cancel to not lose your Anarchy stacks. You can also use the whole magazine each cycle. Either way, that ammo's getting spent. And again, they're kind of overkill on UVH6, but on true mode, they help a ton with the drill site bosses. On true mode, since I don't have perfect gear, I find myself using the Groundbreaker melee a lot more often as a finisher. It's primed with a shit ton of damage after the stasis ends, so if anyone survives the slams, you slap one of them with Groundbreaker, and it'll spread through a tangle to finish them off. If you time everything right and work your passives, you can pretty much one-shot with a Groundbreaker crit on true mode, but it's honestly pretty difficult to pull off. The timing's pretty tight, so most of the time you're only getting about half their health, and then you gotta do it all over again. It's definitely easier on regular UVH6 though. If you're using the Cold Plunge Inertia combo, you won't have to swap weapons. Just keep the sticky Anarchy in your hands, and all the stasis kills fill it by the time the boss spawns. It saves a ton of ammo. You'll really only have to shoot badasses, since it takes a few slams to kill them, but regular mobs die pretty easily, so you'll want to bubble them to keep Inertia going. This one's super chill. The Singularity's range is huge, so you just keep throwing the bubble and everyone's CC'd or dead. I'd recommend trying Flash Freeze with this combo. It's pretty fun. Now for bossing specific stuff. It's pretty much the same thing, stickies and slam. Stack your Anarchy if you just spawned in. True mode, you want to use that Atlas setup, but on regular UVH6, you shouldn't need it, especially if you're reload canceling. It honestly only takes a few more seconds to kill on true mode, depending on your luck with Atlas. I personally like to use my regular Anarchy on UVH6, but I figured I'd show you how to speed up the kills with the stickies and slam. You can do all this on Bloomreaper too, but for him you'll want to use the Atlas setup. I like the chaotic nature of the kickballer, so I use that on his first phase. Sometimes those balls come straight at you, man. I'm like fucking dodging in real life and shit. But as soon as he starts transitioning, swap to the Anarchy and start stacking. I like to empty it on the way to the arena, that way it's quicker to get stacking. If you mix in melee and grappling, you'll stack super quick. You should be ready to go by the time he jumps down. Then just do your thing, but make sure you're meleeing every so often to get that Groundbreaker damage. It's not too bad once you get it all down. And of course, you know, bot works too. Bloomreaper on true mode though, I'm not 100% sure if plat is possible. I kind of believe it is because I've been pretty close, but I might need absolutely perfect gear for that. Also, be mindful of your stickies when you're trying to proc ground slam. Some things to note against bosses, they all have a specific spot where the bubble activates on them. You can catch a glimpse when it pops. It's usually centered on them, but when they're in the air, that hurt box or bubble box stays in the same position as if they were on the ground. So you have to keep that spot in your point of view while you're shooting them to be able to use your bubble. The bird guys is really low. It's like pretty much on the ground. If you want to hit him while he's flying overhead, you gotta like snap your camera straight down to the ground. And if you want to use your bubble when he's off stage, you gotta pretty much be on the edge. When Radix is in the air, it's at his feet, and the other guy, it's at the tip of the cocoon. I'm not sure, but I think this is why certain homing projectiles miss. I think they're aiming for this hurt box. I don't know, but it's kind of interesting. And I think that just about covers it. Little basic overview. But this playstyle is so much fucking fun. It's a big part of why I've stayed loyal to the blue tree. It's just so damn satisfying zooming around and bubbling people and watching the red dots disappear. And it doesn't completely trivialize the game like our other trees. Those make everything way too easy and you can lose interest super fast. Or at least to questionable balancing decisions like, you know, immunity phases. But if that is your jam and you want that infinite ammo stuff, you'll dig my old hybrid setup. It's usable again with that new trooper mod. This is honestly getting kind of long, but fuck it, I'll go over it real quick. You basically keep the same playstyle by speccing enough into blue tree to get falling bodies. Then you spec for critical funding in green, which you'll be able to proc with the crit knife. When the crit knife used to guarantee crits, you could use whatever class mod you wanted since confirmative reality, ripple effect, and the daze combo covered your CDR. But after the knife changes, you'll need a trooper mod. The good thing about the changes though, is you don't need to time your throws anymore. You can just spam that shit since you refund knives so quickly. Obviously, you have a ton more freedom with this setup. You can still spec blue for that inertia swap, and the trooper can cover your bright future investment. Green can focus more on gun damage, slam damage, or crits. If you're running a radiation weapon, you can spec neutron and resonance. Otherwise, remember they can't proc with wildcat. You can get creative with the top of the tree, just make sure you have 2 to 3 points in a confirmative reality. And if you really wanted to, you can throw a point into excited state. It doesn't proc continually with anything in the blue tree, but it will allow you to swap to the green action skill with nuclear winter for bosses, and that'll also let you swap to a different class mod. If wildcat functioned like nuclear winter, you would have even more freedom with this build. Everything else is pretty much the same as my normal setup, so it should be easy to transition. But yeah, there's a lot you can do with this hybrid setup. This is just the base for you to experiment with. Mix it up to your playstyle and see what you come up with. You can even spec your blue tree for that cool plunge and inertia combo if you prefer that over falling bodies. Since critical funding takes care of the entanglement, you can skip out on the daze combo. But yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed. And don't listen to everyone that tells you blue tree is completely garbage and useless. This may not be your strongest setup, and it does need a lot of love, but it damn sure is the most enjoyable to play. At least to me it is. Honestly, I really hope Gearbox doesn't turn the skill into another one-shot insta-gib thing. Not everything needs to be overpowered. And honestly, with the way this community is, they'll have their fun with it for a few days, then just go back to holding down left click with the green tree. There are some changes I'd like to see to help with bossing, but other than that, it just needs some value changes or multipliers to help with true mode. Anyhow, that's it for real this time. Like I said, I'll post an in-depth thing either a day or two after this one goes up, depending on how I feel. There's just so much to go over. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy playing with Harlowe's big blue balls. What?